shit. What is going on, Gorilla Gang? So today we're talking land navigation and how not to get lost and die in the f***ing woods like a nerd. All right, I am PNW Gorilla, co-hosted today by
Cogent,
who is our essentially smart guy amongst all us retards. So, right off the bat, I'm going to hand over the majority of the logistical talkings and the smart things to Cogent, and then I'm going to be discussing mostly gear and equipment and I guess that side of the house, and we'll be bouncing back and forth throughout the video. So,
what's going on, guys? Editor Alex here. So everything that you're about to see in this video can be referenced in FM 21-26. This is a field manual from the U.S. Army. This is going to have pretty much everything you need to know about land navigation. The biggest thing with this is when you buy this book, when you're reading it, it is extremely dry and it can be kind of confusing if you have no experience on it. So if there's anything that is missed in the video, if there's anything that you'd like to divulge into further, if there's anything you'd like to know further on, this is going to be your reference. There is a plethora of knowledge out there as well. There's other books on land navigation. We are not the only resource for it. The majority of my knowledge is actually coming from experience in the United States military industrial complex, but you can get it from books. All right, back to the video.
So, without further ado, Cogent.
land navigation. What is it, first of all? There is some big technical definition out there. Basically, it's how do we get across land on foot using basic tools. And for those tools, we have an assortment of them here. But usually what you want is going to be a map. So we're going to talk about maps first. But in general, again, what we're trying to do is we're either trying to get somewhere, we're trying to figure out where we are, or we're trying to figure out where something that you saw is in relation to some kind of standardized way of us to communicate that information, which is a map. And land navigation also just breaks down into four main skills, which we're going to talk about today. They're going to be map reading, again, we're going to start with that. Then terrain association, which is a big one, plotting, and then how to use a compass, which is, again, another one of the tools you're going to need. So
for all the retards out there, you're at point A, you have to get to point B. How you getting there?
Pretty much. And we're probably going to start with using a map. What do all these lines, colors, and random place where we've never been before mean? So we can break down a map into a couple of key areas. We have the main map here, but we want to generally start with this legend down here. This tells us a lot of information about what the map is. First, we know that we're in the land of far, far away.
Far away.
So you're also going to have your scale, and then the reference of scale. You want what zone that you're operating out of. So if you have multiple maps, you know which map is which, and then if because usually you're going to have if you're doing some sort of military operation like that, or you have a larger element whatsoever, you're going to have someone that has multiple maps, and they're going to have a larger version of that map. So you know where you are on the bigger map. For anyone that's played Minecraft, you should know what we're talking about here. A lot of people are going to understand it though, unfortunately. Maybe. It's not going to be a one-for-one, because why would it be? But if you get lost at any point, you're like, oh, I just need to find where I'm going. That's what we're doing here.
Thing with your legend, again, there's a bunch of information down here. It tells you stuff about what is actually up here at the top, which is the bulk of the map itself. Again, as Gorilla pointed out, we have our scale here. Generally speaking, your maps, at least on a ground soldier kind of capacity, they're going to be 1 by 25,000 or 1 by 50,000. What this means is that things in real life are, in this case, 50,000 times smaller on this map. So the distance from here to here, it might be a couple inches on paper. You multiply that by 50,000, that's how far you're actually going. Down here, it also tells us we got 1 inch is equal to 4,000 feet, 4,167 on this piece of paper. We have our magnetic declination angle right here, which again we'll also get into. We have grid lines. So these grid lines cut up our map into a bunch of tiny little squares, and they're numbered up here. And this is what I realized. They're in a different kind of numbering system, which is just fine for what we're doing today. but we have 84, 85, 86, 87, etc. So each of these lines in this map are spaced 1 kilometer apart. Well, not like on the map itself, but the stuff that's on the map, this point right here is 1 kilometer away from that point, which is 1 kilometer away from that point. So again, an easy way to also check if you have printed your map at the correct scale and your printer isn't fucky. Is to measure one of these squares. So 1 kilometer, divide that by 50,000, that's gonna be 2 centimeters. So each of these squares should be 2 centimeters when you measure it with a ruler. If it's smaller, you need to scale your map up. Vice versa, if it's too big. If on here it's like 2.3 centimeters, you gotta scale your map down. We got a bunch of other weird, fun colors on this map too. We got greens, we got blue. Blue's gonna be our water. So we got solid blue right here for a river, dashed blue for like little streams that feed into that river. What else do we have? Big black right in the middle here. That's going to be our main paved road. We have a little bit of dashed black over here, and that's going to be kind of more of an unpaved road.
And if you have a larger map, or if you have a military map, it'll tell you what the colors are on the legend. It depends on how fancy whoever made your map it went with it.
Yep. And that's also something, if you use the same website, which we use CalTopo for all of our maps, because you can print plenty of maps for free, they'll have a legend on their website that tells you this is what we use purple for. And like in this case, it's boundaries between, you know, like forest land and private property or logging land and that kind of stuff.
That will also be in the description. You guys can just click a link, go right to it. Once again, CalTopo, that's where we make our maps. So far, it's pretty good. Biggest thing with that is just, if you don't know what you're doing, you can screw it up.
We just have to be particular about it.
Yeah.
So there can be a bunch of other colors. Again, we got like gray for like a power line that's coming through here. Consult your legend. Again, if you have a bigger map, it'll have a legend printed on it. Here we're trying to maximize real estate, so we got as much map as possible without a bunch of stuff telling us what colors are. But probably the most important color, and this leads us right into our next section on terrain association, are these orange lines here. So these are what are called contour lines. Essentially, what a contour line is it shows us every single point that's a certain elevation. So here we got a loop of 8,000. Every single point along that dark orange line right here is at 8,000 feet above sea level. Next one over, so the next line over from that is going to be a 200-foot difference. So we got 7,800 feet right here, then 76, 74, etc., etc. So if we think about it, if every single line is spaced out 200 feet, if those two lines are close together, what does that mean? It doesn't take long for us to cover 200 feet. If they're more spaced out like here, that probably means it's a nice flat area for us to traverse across, and that would be nicer for us to go somewhere where it's more spaced out as opposed to climbing up a cliff right here where those lines are close together.
So that's going to come down to your choosing of a route of, you know, is it going to be easier to go up a cliff face, or is it going to be easier to go up a, you know, gradual grade? And, you know, if you want to take the cliff face, well, those contour lines are going to be nice and close together, and that's where you can go, which for some reason, I don't know how many times we've done that.
Oh no, we didn't scout the route. The other cool thing about contour lines is they make patterns, and because we're humans with pattern-seeking brains, we can notice some of those patterns and notice things. Maps, at least, the things that we can notice are certain terrain features. So very common things. We have our 5 main ones, and what's the mnemonic that we use? We have 5 main terrain features. Hidden Valley Ranch salad dressing is the way to remember it, and so that becomes hill, valley, ridge, saddle, and depression. And it's not the kind that you might be suffering from right now.
Rip.
Reach out if you need help. So again, a hill. What's a hill going to look like on our map?
Oh, I guess I should write the actual thing. That would
yeah, the actual thing.
Yeah.
All right, so we got, again, our 5 main terrain features here. A hill, this is what it's going to look like. Again, if we think about what a hill is, it's the top of something, and then everything goes down from there, and it's going to be slices of that hill. In this case, we can see that we have a hill here, and it's not like perfect circles, but we have our highest terrain line, and then everything else is going down from there. So again, that's kind of where everything peaks up towards the top. Then we have a valley, which is going to be usually where things like roads will be, or rivers. They're going to be the lowest point between 2 areas of increasing elevation. So we have, again, kind of right down the middle of this map, we have a bunch of terrain lines that are kind of highlighting where that bottom of that valley is, and of course some smart person put a nice road there. Ridges, gonna be a bunch of hills all plotted together. Ridges are gonna be, again, kind of that long connection of several hills together, and this is actually a great one. We got a little circle of a contour line there, another circle contour line, and so this is probably a ridge right here, and then everything goes down off either side. A saddle, if you think about what a horse saddle looks like, that's kind of what it is. It's going to go down in one direction, up in another, usually along a ridge, so it's kind of the spot between two hills. If I wanted to cross over a ridge, I'm going to find the saddle point, so the lowest part along that hilly surface or that ridge line surface for me to cross over.
So if you're stupid and you like dumb jokes, just think of like a big cowboy wanting to ride in the middle of two hills, and they're like, oh, that's a saddle.
Yeah.
That works for my dumb monkey brain, so woo!
And the last one is a depression, which is going to look just like our hill, except instead of this one being the highest point of elevation, it's going to be the lowest one. So that's usually where you'll find things like swamps. What else will we find in the depression?
Bogs, your lower water points, your even sinkholes, decent fighting positions. Like, no joke, it's like, I wouldn't mind being there.
Again, bogs and swamps, those aren't generally places where we want to be, so that's a way to remember depressions too. Where's the spot on the map where I don't want to be? It's in the low ground where everybody else has the high ground, and it's so over.
Yep, it's so ogre. We're so Shrek'd.
We're so Shrek'd. From there, we got a couple of other minor terrain features. Spurs and draws.
I don't think I brought a single rag.
That's okay. It'll buff.
Really blue this time.
Cool. All right, so minor terrain features. Two first ones to remember are spurs and draws. They're kind of areas where, so again, a spur would kind of be like a ridge line going down that sticks out. So if I use my fist here as an example, we got a ridge line here. We got all these like little hills that come off, and those are our spurs. In between those is going to be our draws. And draws on maps is that's usually where a lot of these little streams come in from. So streams will feed in through draws into a main valley where you have your main water source. Aside from that, fills and cuts, these are mostly used for roads. So a fill, you're filling in a spot so that you could put a road on top of it. And a cut is going to be the opposite, cutting away the earth. That's a nice skeeter.
These are mostly used for train tracks and tunnels.
Train tracks, tunnels, roads as well in some cases. And then the last minor terrain feature is a cliff, which is just a bunch of lines really close together. Again, remember, every line is a jump of 200 feet in this case. So if you see your lines getting really close together, there's probably a cliff face there, and that's probably not something that you want to try and traverse over. I mean, you can. I'm not going to stop you.
Have at it, champ. We've done it before, because we're idiots.
So with all these in mind, again, you can use that mnemonic before to remember the main ones: hidden valley ranch salad dressing, hill, valley, ridge, saddle, depression. Remember those 5, and from there we can figure out where we are.
Yep.
So I can just be standing here and say, oh look, there's a hill over there, there's a hill over there, and I'm standing next to a river, and so I'm gonna go find the river, and then there's 2 hills, and okay, I'm probably right along here somewhere, and then from there get my bearings that way.
What do we got next?
From here, so again, we kind of know terrain association. We can probably plot a route now that we know it's like, oh hey, there's a hill, there's a cliff. That's now we can figure out, okay, how do we go from point A to point B, and how do we even figure out what point A actually is? So we're going to, let's wipe this board.
Okay.
All right, so again, we know terrain association. Now we can figure out plotting a map. Start at this point A, and how do we describe what point A is? So we're going to be using something called the Military Grid Reference System, MGRS. There are similar grid systems. Again, that's kind of where we get our grid lines from. And the way that MGRS works is we usually have a string of numbers that tell us a position on the map. So we're going to start with just a very, very short example of building up. We're going to start with a 4-digit grid, and then we're going to build it up all the way to a 10-digit grid, just as an example. So we're going to start with this one that I'm just coming up with on the fly. Like a lot more than 4 digits, right? Well, again, if we look back to our legend, we're in zone 13S. And technically, if we were using MGRS, this would say 13S something something. So 13 Sierra, then we have 04, which we see right here, 04 in front of all of our numbers for our grids. So that's our 04 section. And I guess technically for the vertical, it's a little different. So this should be 13 Sierra Delta Charlie. And then this is our actual grid. So 8971 is our grid on this map that we need to plot. That's the grid we need to plot. How do we figure out where on this map 8971 is? Well, we're going to take these 4 numbers and we're going to cut them right down the middle, right here. And we're going to have 89 and 71. And the way to remember which one's which is to remember right up the ass is a mnemonic that works really, really well. So 89 is going to be our left to right, and 71 is going to be our up and down. So we're gonna start by going from left to right. So we're gonna go right until we hit 89, and then we have 71. So we're going to go up until we hit 71, and it's right behind this magnet. Right there is our point. And so 8971, this grid refers to this entire square right here that we're looking at. So that whole square is our 8971 grid square. Our 8971 grid square, that's gonna be this one here. Now, again, this refers to a 1 kilometer by 1 kilometer area. We probably want to be a little more precise than just, hey, I'm somewhere within this, 1 square kilometer thing. So the way MGRS works is we can divide this up into 10 more little squares going this way. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, or I guess technically we only have 9, so that divides us up into 10 squares, and then this way as well. I'm not going to count out 10 that time. Each of these gets a new number as well, so we got from 1, 2, 3, 4, etc. all the way up, and so now we can build up a 6-digit grid. So we'll do something like 13 Sierra, and again, technically this should be the Delta Charlie zone, and we're looking at 8, 9, maybe 4, and then we got 7, 1, 3. So again, what does this mean? This is our zone. We find this from our legend. This is our 6 digits that we actually need to plot. So again, we're going to split this up into half. We got 89, and now we have a 4 as well. And we got a 3 for our up direction. So once we find, again, our grid square that we're working with, we're going to subdivide that into a bunch of smaller sections. And we'll use a protractor here in a bit to actually formally do that on the map. But just imagine that this is cut up into a bunch of tiny little squares, and we're going to count over 4 squares. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and then we're going to go up, because remember, you go right first, then up, 1, 2, 3 lines, and that would be our corner. And again, now we're just looking at this square. So now we're looking at not a 1 kilometer by 1 kilometer square, but we're looking at 100 meter by 100 meter square, which gives you a lot more precise area. You say, hey, go to this field, that field is probably a little bit bigger than, or that field would probably be easily described with just a 6-digit grid. But then we can subdivide that further again. So we can take this big square, cut it down to smaller squares, take that square, cut it down even smaller, give ourselves an 8-digit grid. So 1, 3, S, Sierra, Delta, Charlie. Wow, I cannot write Charlie. 8, 9, 4, 2, 7, 1, 3, 9. Cool. Again, zone, 8-digit grid, cut in half. We now have another 2 here and a 9. So once we go 4 over, we're going to go cut that up into just like 0.2 over, and then we're going to go up 0.9, so almost all the way up to that line. Now we're describing a 10 by 10 meter square. And then if we add, again, another digit, we describe a 1 by 1 meter square, which for those of you who use washing machines, that's about the size of a washing machine.
That is the first time that I have ever heard that size reference.
I mean, Americans will do anything except use the metric system.
So anyway, that's at least 100 washing machines.
So yeah, if you needed to precisely describe where a washing machine was, you'd use a 10-digit grid. Again, for most things, we don't have the resolution to actually go in and divide this up into the thousands of tiny little squares to precisely point that out. But what we do have is a protractor and a little bit of eyeballing. Found our 8971. This is our grid square. On the protractor, you'll see there's a little cutout. You're going to move the protractor to the right. Again, remember, going right first until these bottom lines line up with that vertical grid square.
Okay, so north. All right, let's see if we can actually take a look at this. Okay, so the biggest thing when it comes to using a protractor is you want to actually make sure the first thing that you do, well, technically the first thing you do is find north. But the second thing that you do is that you're going to make sure that you're actually using the correct scale. You have no idea how many times this happens. So if we're using the 1 by 50,000, right, we are going to pick the 1 by 50,000. Now, if you are to buy one of the protractors from me, I pretty much stick to the 1 by 50,000. So when you're using a protractor, as far as like UTM, MGRS, you're usually either using 1 by 50, 1 by 25, or 1 by 24. That's kind of the main that everybody uses. Now, if you're a Forest Service guy and you're using, you know, your guys' system, you know, have fun, do that. No, thank you. So not everyone uses what we're using, just so you guys are aware. But so you find your 1 by 50,000 scale, and then you're going to start at the 0, 0. You're going to move right and then go up. Once again, like he just said, right and up. And you want to keep that in your head when you are plotting a point of right and up, right and up. I don't know how many times I've seen guys screw this up. I don't know how many times I have screwed this up. And navigation is just like riding a bicycle, where in fact, if you do not do it, you are going to lose it. But land navigation's so much faster that you're gonna lose it.
Track, we find our scale, like Alex was talking about. We're going to find our square that we're working with, and we're going to put 0, 0 right on that corner of that square where that 79, or sorry, that 89 and that 71 line up. We're going to move the protractor to the right, and that's why these numbers are backwards. You might look at this triangle and say, why are the numbers going backwards? Well, it's because we're moving the whole triangle over to the right, again, until we line this vertical line up with the 4 here. So that means that now this nice slot that's cut in here is on the 4 axis. So again, if we look at how we cut them up here, we're now have our slot positioned on this 4. And now we can go over with the tiny little lines there and kind of go over to roughly where point 2 kind of sort of is. Then again, we went right, we got all our right stuff done. Now we're gonna go up from 71, we're gonna go up to 3. And then right above 3, almost all the way to 4 is where our 0.9 is going to be over here. And so if I had a tinier pencil, actually I guess I still dropped that point. There we go. Now we have our 8-digit grid describing a 10 by 10 meter spot. I should be able to find my guy if he's within a 10 by 10 meter square at this grid location. So this is something that takes a lot of practice. You're going to plot points several times. Again, the thing to remember, right then up, we take our grid, we cut it in half, we find our 2 main, these 2 numbers are going to be telling us our big lines. From there, we subdivide with our triangle, first dividing by 10, so going over 4 of those big 10 lines. Then we're gonna go over 2 of the smaller lines, which again, on this one, we don't have lines for every single 10. We have just a couple of lines, so we have to guess sometimes. It's a little tricky, takes some practice, but you can get it done. Yay!
So land navigation might seem confusing at first. It might seem even a little bit, overbearing of like, wow, this is a lot of numbers, this is a lot of math, this is a lot to do. If you just stop and try it a couple of times, it's actually unfathomably easy. Like, doing the basics of land navigation is so easy. It's once you start getting into like the intricate stuff, once you start getting into like the high level where you're back azimuths and then trying to articulate, okay, well, this is over here and this is over here. Where am I? Okay, well, where are these 2 points if I'm at an unknown point? There are things that get now, and if you train that, it's not like the hardest thing ever because you've trained it, but at first it sounds daunting.
And just for the average civilian, this is probably the most you're going to need. Being able to use MGRS coordinates if your maps are in MGRS, and just being able to say, this is, somebody told me to go to this point, I can find it on a map, and then maybe I can find where I'm at, and I'm probably, like, let's say that I'm over here, and I need to go from this location to this location. Well, how far away is that, you might ask?
Well, not only how far away is that,
In what direction, and we'll get to that, yeah.
Well, I was gonna say, planning routes to get there. Cool,
Yep.
You found where you're going. How?
You don't need a route, just dead reckon it.
Just dead reckon. Have a time, guys. Get out there. Go walk in one direction. Be a man.
So if you've bought one of these from odgglc.com,
Actually, everything's here for me, isn't it?
There's a really tiny hole in the middle of your protractor, and this really tired protractor that I need to retire shows why. So we can put a little string of just 550 cord, the insides of it, gut it, tie it in, or tie a knot on either side, and now you have a string. This is going to help us actually use the angles on the protractor. But another thing we can do is, if we're just going to dead reckon, or if we have multiple points, we need to figure out how far away 2 points are. I'm going to do, kind of, sort of, is put one end of the string on one point, and then mark with this marker that I just closed where the other point is. So right there. So again, now on my string I have the end of the string and that little point that I marked, and that's where these scale bars come back in. Let me put this magnet back on there. There we go. So the scale bars at the bottom, each of these bars up here is going to be 1 kilometer. On the left side, there's a bunch of tiny bars, and those are fractions of a kilometer. So I'm just gonna put this here and just say, cool. That looks like actually pretty much exactly 2 kilometers. So from the end of the string all the way to here, where that 2 is, that's how far away those 2 points are. So again, if I'm there, I have 2 kilometers in a straight line to get to that point. And now you might think, well, which direction do I go? I'm standing here. How do I use a compass to figure out which direction to go?
How does go north? Please do make a north.
It's like that way, kind of, maybe. Compasses, they show us direction, and they subdivide it into 360 degrees, or if you're a nerd, if you're gonna be in like mills and mill rads and whatever else. But again, we have a compass. It shows us 360 degrees. On our protractors, we also have 360 degrees. So by putting our center point on one of the points, and by pointing the string in the other towards the other point, we can see that if I'm starting up here, I need to head in roughly 139 degrees. So we're gonna say 139 degrees. Now, it's 139 degrees. It's gonna be clockwise from north, but we can come back to this now. There's actually more than one north. So we have our what's called magnetic north, and that's what our compass is going to point us to. We also have the north of the map, which is how these lines are drawn.
Grid north.
Grid north, yeah. So that's these 2 lines right here, and we say MN 7.6. What that means is that 7.6 degrees is the difference from our magnetic to our grid north. So when we point north, we're not actually pointing straight up and down. We're pointing 7.6 degrees to the right. That's where this arrow is right here on this map. If you're in the land of upside down, this is going to be different. That arrow is going to be pointing to the other side. If you're somewhere along the footstool of an earth that we're on,
so wherever you are in the world, you need to look up where you are and what your GM angle is. Everywhere on Earth is different. So whatever GM angle we tell you that we're using is not going to work for you. You have to look up where it is for your area, and then you have to take that into account when you're going from grid to magnetic and then magnetic to grid.
Build this concept up. So one of the first things that we do, and we haven't even covered this, we waited until the very end to tell you, the first thing you need to do when you're going to do land navigation is orient north. I'm not going to stand facing south and be like, all right, my map's over here, whatever, and then I need to head that way. No, I want to orient myself and my map and my compass, everything north. So again, which north do we choose? Choose our compass north. Arrow in there, and the arrow points north.
Okay, so whether you have a fancy compass, this is the one that I like. That's the Kamenga. These are baller, but they are expensive. These are the ones that I sell. They're a little bit lower end, but they absolutely work. So the first thing that you want to do is make sure that your compass is away from your body, specifically your rifle. If you have a rifle on you...
Well, look, there's north.
Yeah, so the metal in the rifle is going to screw up the compass. I think this compass is kind of broken. This place looks familiar. Huh. There is a bunch of different metrics that I've posted online before of the different distances that you have to be away from for a compass to actually work. So just the biggest ones though is just make sure that it's away from your rifle and it's away from your vehicle if you have one. Obviously if you have, other metallic things, don't have your compass like, next to your knife or like if you have other things, don't just be like, oh man, where am I looking? So you want to have it off your body a little bit, but you also want to see it. So, you're not like this. Try to make it make sense. I hate that I have to over-explain everything, but just make it make sense. Continue.
So yeah, once we find north, we're gonna set our compass down so that it aligns with north, and then we're gonna set our map down as well so it also aligns with north. And if we look at that, and then we say, cool, our compass is pointing that way, and my grid north is this way, which in this case would be about 350 something degrees. Okay, cool, that means that my number here, the 7.6, I need to be subtracting that from any value that I say. So again, our 139 degrees we found earlier, I need to subtract 7.6 degrees to get 131 and change degrees. So I'm going to be heading roughly in a 131 degree heading to go from that point to that point. And so we start with our grid direction, and we just built that up again just by saying, cool, if my compass is pointing that way, and for my map it's going to be subtracted. So again, kind of the idea, and then for military guys it's a lot easier to remember. So a general is a higher rank than a major, so to go from major to general you're getting a promotion. So from magnetic to grid, M to G, we are going to add. So again, if that's if I say, hey, that thing over there is 150 degrees, okay, well I need to take that back to the map. I'm going to add my magnetic declination angle, and again in this case it's only adding, again if we're in the upper hemisphere, whatever. So you can always build it back up with your map just by laying your map down, seeing where your magnetic north is pointing, and then figuring out, okay, well, do I have to subtract to get my grid north to line up, or vice versa? Yeah, so again, we have our direction that we need to head in, and now we can do what's called shooting in azimuth, which is a just fancy way of saying I want to head in that direction.
Yep.
So your compass should have some kind of dial that you can rotate to that degree. So we're going to rotate to 131, right about there. Again, after I've subtracted my grid north, or my magnetic declination angle, 131 degrees. In this Sunto compass that I really like, there's a little V groove right here. There's a mirror, and so you can look through the compass, through that little V groove, and look at your mirror here to see when the red needle lines up with that with the red box that the needle's supposed to go in. I'm just losing it now. So again, we're going to look through our V groove, and in the mirror I can see roughly there is where my red line lines up with the red box that it's supposed to go into. And so that means if I look at that through that V, everything's lined up, and in that V I see this big tree. That means if I walk in the direction of that tree, I'm walking in 131 degrees relative to magnetic north. And I can walk to that tree, I can get on the backside of that tree, shoot my azimuth again, and say, cool, that next rock over there, that's also in the 131 degree direction, and I'm going to keep walking that way. That's how you stay on track. You have to constantly shoot your azimuth until you see, okay, that's the thing that I'm going to walk towards, and then you can walk to it.
Yeah, so like just continuously just be picking your favorite tree and your favorite tree,
Yep.
and your favorite tree and your favorite tree.
Mm-hmm.
If there's trees around you, if there's cactuses, then have fun.
Yeah, pick your favorite cactus.
Pick your favorite cactus.
And don't forget which one it is. So, again, depending on your compass, you'll have different kinds of peepholes, but the process is still the same. We rotate our compass until that notch marks up with our value that we need to head in. We're going to pick something to walk towards, and then we're going to just start walking. And we're going to keep heading in that direction until we have to change directions because of our route.
And your fat ass has to be able to walk.
Yep. There's another concept people toss around called back azimuths. It's basically like, okay, I walked in that direction. How do I walk back?
It's so easy, but yet so overcomplicated.
Yep. It's just subtract 180 degrees.
Just go the opposite way,
Just
bro.
go the opposite way. If your compass has a
around.
needle that is a complete straight line, you literally just say, okay, what's the back azimuth of 120? It's the other side of the needle. It's 300.
Oh, wow.
So you don't have to remember a bunch of math or a bunch of mnemonics. Just use your tools available to you.
Be aware of your surroundings and just go back the way you came.
Also that. So again, tying all this stuff together, there's 2 norths, technically 3. There's some like true north conspiracy or something like that, but nobody ever uses it. The 2 that you need to remember are grid north and magnetic north. Again, grid is what is straight up and down on the map, and magnetic is where is my compass needle going to point. Those 2 don't line up because people draw maps in like fictional space, and then we have to use them, and the magnets point in different directions also for some reason, and they might start pointing in other directions in a couple years. That's, I don't know.
The moon's not real.
The moon's not real.
Oh no, bro, you don't understand, man. The moon, it's messing with land nav, bro. Sure.
Yeah, not really.
3, 2, 1, go.
All right, so we're gonna tie everything together. We've done a lot of talking. We've covered our 4 main points that we started out with, which were how to read a map, how to associate terrain and notice things, how to plot points and figure out this very complex but actually pretty straightforward system. Again, you have your zone, you got your 6, 8, 10 digit grid, and then lastly, how to actually use a compass, which is honestly probably the thing that takes the most practice, is going out there, plotting some points, figuring out, okay, is this actually the angle? Did I add or subtract right? Just practicing that, and you can practice that by coming out to one of our land navigation events next weekend. But overall, kind of the main process is, okay, I'm going from A to B, but I'm not actually just gonna go like straight from A to B. I'm gonna sit down on the map, I'm gonna figure out where I am. Can I follow a road for a certain amount of distance? Do I have to like avoid this cliff? And so instead of going A to B, banana hammock, the code word is this grid right here. Huh? Yeah,
fair enough.
Bring this grid. If you're coming out next weekend, you need to remember this grid.
If you show up and you don't tell me that, you're leaving.
The first point I have to walk in 100 degrees, and I have to walk that direction for 300 meters. And then from that first point to the other one, I have to walk in a 300 degree direction. And I'm gonna do that for, 500 meters, and then et cetera, et cetera. Now you might be asking, how do I know when I've walked 500 meters?
How do I know? How do I know?
How do I know?
Where did I put those?
Are you lacking?
No, I'm not lagging.
Okay. Ranger beads. These are important. I actually carry some on a bracelet every single day. For this, what you need to know is something called your pace count. And your pace count is just how many steps does it take, well, technically, how many left foot steps does it take you
have I walked?
to make 100 meters. So I'm going to, just shoot 50 meters out, and I'm gonna walk there and back with a rangefinder 100 meters. And every time that my left foot hits the ground, I'm going to say 1, and then 2, and then 3, etc., up until I've counted it up. I actually need to redo mine because I haven't done those in a while. But for me, it's about 64 paces.
Yeah, same.
Yeah.
Also, so when it comes to the pace count, you guys want to make sure that you're using meters. If you're going to be doing land navigation like we're training you, you have to have your pace count in meters, or your pace count's going to be off in reference to how much you're walking. Now, the pace count's still a guesstimation anyway.
Yep.
It's not ever going to be like exact. But if it's wrong, then it's wrong.
This is something that you should know, and it's something that's another tool in the tool bag, something to help guide you when you're walking for distance. It's by no means definite and precise. But again, I'll figure out, cool,
Not
there's
exact.
there's a tree that's 50 meters away. I'm gonna walk there and back to make 100 meters. I count every time that my left foot hits the ground. Cool, my pace count is 69. Nice.
Nice.
Or it could be like 60 or 70 if you got really tiny legs, or 80 even.
Not nice.
Not nice. More steps, bad. Anyways, you get your pace count, and now I start walking, and cool, I walked 100 meters because I counted 69 steps with my left foot. Boom, Now I moved one of the beads over from the 9 over here. I've walked 100 meters. My next 100 meters I walk, boom, 200 meters I walk now. Now 300, 400, 500, etc. Cool, I walked the 500 meters before I needed to turn left. Reset. Cool, now I start walking my 1.2 kilometers, 1, 2, 3, etc., etc., until you walk 900 meters. Once you walk 900, use these top beads. Now I'm at 1,000 meters, 1 kilometer. All these beads move back, keep doing it. So again, this is just a way for you to physically keep track of how far you've gone, so you don't have to remember big numbers in your head.
You will be tired.
Like 60 is still a big number for some of you, but remember your pace counts and have ranger beads. These are pretty helpful to have around. Again, for when you're moving long distances and you need to walk a specific, or at least a rough distance to say, cool, okay, I've walked 600 meters, I got roughly another 500 to go before I reach what should be a plane that, you know, my first point where there should maybe be some kind of, you know, marker or land navigation point that I'm going to pick up or whatever else you're walking towards.
So when it comes to ranger beads, you can make your own. They are not hard to make at all. Or if you're lazy, you can buy them from me. I'm going to make fun of you for being lazy, but I sell them.
Yep. I made one that's in a bracelet, so I wear this on, you know, just on me every day, and then I can unclip it and clip it to my kit if I'm walking around. But it's just, you know, it also looks cool and kind of low pro. Yep.
And it looks cool.
I think we've pretty much covered everything. At this point, all you need to do is either come out to an event and practice some land nav with us, or just do it on your own. Find a map of your area, plot some points, get practice reading and understanding MGRS, understanding angles and how to subtract degrees if you need to. And again, you really don't need a lot of stuff. You need a map, you need a compass, you need a protractor, maybe a notebook to write down all your points in, and that's really it. You don't need a fancy GPS watch. You don't need to have your phone with you, or at least you shouldn't. These are all great tools. Like, I wear a GPS watch every day. We have like the Garmin Fortrexes. Those are really nice. But again, these are extra tools that help us out, and we shouldn't rely on them. The map, the protractor, the compass, the terrain association isn't something that a GPS will tell you. That's something that you have to figure out. Oh yeah, there's a cliff right there. Maybe I shouldn't walk in the straight line that my GPS told me to. Don't rely on GPSs. Use these. I personally, like, these are my favorite protractors.
Yeah, I do.
Tiny ones.
No, they are great. This is going to die long before this.
Yes. Yeah, protractor, map, compass, that's all you need. And then you just need to go out and get some practice. So go outside and train.
Go outside and train, simple as. All right, we got nothing else?
No.
All right, this has been our land navigation video. If you guys were not tracking, if you were not aware, sell land navigation starter kits and accessories. A lot of the stuff on the table I sell. I do not sell any electronics as of yet. We'll get there, but nonetheless, you don't need the electronics. Go out, buy the simple tools, and just go practice. That's it. That's all you gotta do. Buying this is not enough. Just having this at your house is not enough. If you do not have the skills, you are not an asset. You just own things. Yeah, that's pretty much all I have. Any closing statements?
Christ is Lord.
Based. All right, so Patreon, website, follow, like, share, all that jazz, and we'll see you guys in the next one. Once again, if you are coming to the next open event, you guys know what to do. ATS.